Okay, with that, I think that we are officially underway, and I will say a big welcome to all of our participants tonight for a special town hall that is being hosted by Councillor John Filion's office on environment and climate change. We're really happy to have you all with us tonight, as well as a great panel of individuals from the city and from the community that will be sharing some ideas with us tonight. And we hope to have you all participating as well as we work through our agenda this evening. I am going to start the evening with a land acknowledgement for the City of Toronto. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on this evening virtually is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am going to introduce our panel this evening, including our councillor for Ward 18 Willowdale, John Filion, Megan McLean, who is with the City of Toronto's Office of Environment and Energy and the TransformTO program, Ms. Esther Collier, a teacher at Cummer Valley Middle School, and two of her students, Cleomi Burrell and Howard Zhang, who are going to be with us tonight. My name is Marcus O'Brien Fair. I am Councillor Filion's Chief of Staff. I will be moderating the conversation this evening and look forward to bringing you some thoughts from our panel, but also hopefully including all of you that are participating as viewers tonight in a conversation, whether you have questions for our panel or anybody else. By way of introduction, first, I do want to mention that we are recording the conversation tonight so that anybody that hasn't been able to join us, hopefully we can share the conversation with in the weeks ahead and host this recording on John's website at johnfilion.ca. But in terms of how this has all come about, I really have to give credit to Ms. Collier and the students from Cummer Valley. About a year and a half ago, they invited us to attend a session that they were doing at the school, and it was an environment and climate change awareness evening. The students were making presentations. They had an incredible panel of experts speaking about the issues of the day that we're all grappling with. And I was really impressed by how they took a focus on encouraging the audience, encouraging the participants to take individual actions in their own lives to help make a difference. And they followed that up this year with a series of, I guess you would call them small town halls, where the students were again leading conversations and encouraging members of the community to take action. And I committed to them shortly after the first one. I said, this is absolutely fantastic. We would be thrilled to have the councillor work with you and make sure that we can broaden your reach and include others in the Willowdale community that I think would share your passion for the subject matter, the importance, the urgency, and encourage others to think about ways that they can make a difference as well. Megan McLean, who's with us also tonight from the city side, was an eager participant when we reached out to her shortly after. City of Toronto has been doing a lot of work on climate change mitigation strategies under the TransformTO umbrella, and we will talk more about that tonight. But we've really been glad to have both those groups joining us tonight. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to our city councillor, John Filion, so that he can start us off with an introduction to the evening. John, take it away.
Yes, thanks, Marcus. And I again want to thank Esther Collier and Cleomi and Howard for really inspiring us to do this. It sort of reminds me of a few years ago when my daughter challenged me on whether I was doing enough as a city politician on climate change and also around the house, I think all of us need to get pushed a bit. We need to push ourselves more than we have been, but the younger folks who push us all, that's really fantastic. And we all need to do more on a practical level, both in urging government to take more effective action, but also in our everyday lives, what we do as individuals is really important. So that's some of what we'll talk a bit about tonight.
All right, thank you, John. We are going to also encourage audience participation, and so please feel free to use all of those tools, and we will try to make this as interactive a conversation as we can. We're also going to be doing some live polling later on in the evening. There is a link on your screen right now, pollev.com/JohnFilion790. If you want to access that link on a browser, you'll have an opportunity at the end to chime in with a couple of quick polls that will give us some feedback on how we've done over the course of the evening. Up next, I am going to invite Megan McLean from the City's Office of Environment and Energy to spend a few minutes to take us through some of the work that she and her colleagues have been doing at the City of Toronto. Megan, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcus, and thank you, Councillor Filion's office, for having me here today. I'm really excited to come and talk a little bit about TransformTO and climate change in Toronto. Jesse, if you can advance the slide there. Awesome. So just to introduce myself, my name is Megan, and I work in the Environment and Energy Division in Community Climate Action Engagement. So I work with interested residents and community groups and individuals, anyone who really wants to take action in their neighborhood or in their community on climate. So that's what I do for work, which is I'm super lucky. Awesome job. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to really briefly talk about climate change in Toronto, just so we're all on the same page. Not to say anyone here doesn't know about climate change. I'm sure you know a lot, maybe more than me for sure. But just so we're all on the same page, we know the climate change is happening in Toronto, and it looks kind of like what you can see on your screen here. So this picture is from May 2017. It is not a Photoshop photo. It is a real photo from May 2017 when we experienced like pretty severe flooding on the Toronto Island. So we've seen other climate events, so we would call it a climate event, but we've seen other climate events in Toronto in terms of extreme weather. We've seen ice storms, flooding on the island and elsewhere, extended heat waves, hotter days, so on and so forth. So we know that climate change is happening. We're seeing it in terms of these extreme weather events. We also know why climate change is happening. So our emissions in Toronto, so we are able to calculate our local emissions, so emissions that are actually generated here in our city, and they are attributed in three major buckets. So the first is our buildings. So over half of our emissions that contribute to climate change come from how we heat, cool, and power our buildings. Our transportation, which is second, at 36%, and about 79% of that, so about 80% of our emissions in transportation are actually our own personal vehicles. And finally, our waste, which is primarily emissions coming from our landfill, which a lot of which is food waste, which is a more powerful greenhouse gas. So the other cool thing is we also know in Toronto how our residents feel about climate change. So we did a study a couple years ago, which will be repeated this fall, just to understand where people are at in terms of climate change and climate awareness and their level of concern. And you don't need to memorize any of these stats, but just so you're aware that overall, Torontonians are quite concerned about climate change, the impact on themselves and on the city. But the most concerning number is that number at the bottom of your screen, that 48%. So that's kind of hard to read, but it's just about 50% of Torontonians say they don't know what to do for climate change. So while this is a concerning number, it also really helps us to understand where folks are at. And I just want to encourage you, if you're going to have a conversation about climate after tonight or whenever you would like with your friends and neighbors, just to be mindful that people are quite concerned, but about half of people don't really know what to do. So just to have that conversation openly is something that we encourage. So we have this the strategy at the City of Toronto called TransformTO. It was developed and approved by Toronto City Council unanimously, thank you, Council, in 2017. It's now being implemented. You might have heard that Council declared a climate emergency a couple years ago, where they asked for us to increase our targets in TransformTO. Our original targets were an 80% reduction of those harmful emissions, but now we're working towards net zero. And on the next slide, Jesse, we can see what that pathway might look like. So I know graphs and charts aren't the most fun things for people to take a look at, but just so you're aware, this is what the pathway looks like. So we have a number of targets with TransformTO. You can see the 2020 targets. We actually have already surpassed that target, so that's awesome. We're taking a big dip there, but the pathway to net zero is quite significant, quite a significant decline. So the red dotted arrow is where we need to be. So as I mentioned, we have a whole bunch of goals with TransformTO. Again, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff, but if you just want to take a look at some of the goals that are going to help us get to net zero, you can see the 3 buckets of emissions really reflected here. So how we're heating, cooling, and powering our buildings, how we're building our buildings better, how we're getting around the city, so using more active transportation or electric vehicles or low carbon vehicles, and then also advancing towards a more circular economy and a zero waste city. One of the coolest things, though, about TransformTO is that there's a number of guiding principles that help us to implement and connect on climate action. So when we talk about climate action in our city, we don't just talk about reducing those harmful emissions, albeit very, very important, but we also talk about improving our city and the livability of our city in another way in terms of advancing social equity, improving affordability, improving our public health, and improving our economy. So in terms of our progress, as you saw from that graph a couple slides ago, we are doing pretty well. We've had a 40% reduction in those harmful emissions. But I will say that a big chunk of that reduction in terms of our emissions is due to the province phasing out coal-powered plants. So while we do take credit for it as an emissions reduction initiative, it's actually something that happened on the provincial level. But you can see we are progressing on a downward cycle, except for you can see from 2017 to 2018 we had a bit of a blip where we had a number of colder days, which forced the increased use of natural gas. But the table there on the right-hand table is, I think the middle thing is the most key piece of information here, that really we want to get to our 2030 targets. That's going to put us on that good trajectory to getting to net zero, but we have to have our emissions for the next 10 years. So that's pretty significant, and I like to flag that progress and the progress to the targets for folks, because I really think that speaks to the urgency of climate. When we talk about those long-term goals of 2050, sometimes it doesn't resonate so well with folks. But when we talk about some of the targets, the interim targets, I think the 2031 is a good one for us to focus on. That's going to get us on the path to net zero. And on that note, we will be doing some consultations around the actions that are required to get to net zero, starting in a couple weeks and throughout July. So I will flag it again at the end of my presentation, but I just wanted to flag that for folks as an opportunity to get involved and have your say on how we'll become a net zero city. So the city has a bunch of initiatives and programs that are already underway and have been underway for a long time. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards or offline if you wanted to speak about any of these programs specifically. But again, you can see that there are a lot of programs and initiatives related to those 3 big buckets of initiatives in terms of reducing our emissions, around our homes and buildings, our transportation, and our waste. So we have a couple tips here. I know there's a lot to read on this slide, but really, again, you can just see when you take action on climate, you are taking actions that are reducing your emissions in one of those 3 big buckets. But the fourth part of it is we want to reduce our emissions, but we also want people to be involved in their community. So we have a YouTube link, which I think Jesse's going to pop into the chat, where we call the 4 big steps to climate change. And the 3 things are reducing our emissions in homes and buildings, transportation and waste, and taking action in your community. So the community piece is equally important. So in terms of support for community action, as I mentioned, that's what I do for work, which is so awesome. Super lucky that I get to connect with folks like yourselves. But what I would encourage everyone to do, if you are interested in community climate action and maybe you're not sure where to get started, or maybe you just need some advice, just to give myself or anyone on my team a ring. We'd be happy to chat with you on email or phone or via WebEx. about potential initiatives or where your community is at and how we can work with the interests and priorities of your particular community, and framing with a climate lens. So you can see here there's a list of ways that we do support community already, but this is by all means not an exhaustive list. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in climate action, or maybe you're not interested in climate action and you want to get started, just to give us to connect with us. And the one thing I wanted to flag I think that will be interesting to the folks here is that we are working with TDSB, the Toronto District School Board, on an initiative to develop a climate action guide for Toronto youth, so taking action in their homes and communities. And also we will be offering in the fall a pilot climate action grant program that's directed towards youth and students. And I just wanted to show this because I love showing happy faces and excited faces, but I wanted to assure folks as well that climate action didn't stop throughout the pandemic. So I know that there's a lot of focus on the COVID-19 pandemic, quite rightly, but I want to flag for everyone that climate action in the community didn't stop. So here's some examples of what happened in the last year. So as I mentioned, I would invite you all to have your say on the ways that Toronto is going to get to net zero. So as I mentioned, that's going to start in July and throughout the month of July. You can take a peek at our website, TransformTO.ca, or connect with me directly, and I'd be happy to send you the resources. What it's going to look like, we will have an online discussion, an online survey, as well as a discussion guide encouraging folks to host their own virtual community conversations and providing open feedback that way. And that is it for me. I don't know if you, I think I'm going to wait till the end for questions. Is that correct, Marcus? Or?
If you can stick with us for a little bit, Megan, that would be great. I know we've had a few that have come in the Q&A already with some follow-up, and would love to throw a few things back to you and the councillor as we further engage in this conversation, if that's okay. And for everybody listening in, we'll also make sure that we are circulating these links Councillor's webpage and his weekly e-newsletter. And if you're not subscribed to his e-newsletter, you can do that at johnfilion.ca. And it's a great resource too for all things that are city related or Willowdale related and things that are coming up. So thanks very much for that, Megan. And we're going to come back to you in just a moment with a couple of those questions from the community. But at this point, I would like to again introduce Miss Esther Collier, a teacher at Cummer Valley Middle School, and the students that she has working with her this evening, Cleomi Burrell and Howard Zhang. They have hosted at Cummer Valley a few conversations both this year and in years past, encouraging members of the Willowdale community and the Cummer Valley community to take action on some of these issues, and we've asked them to share some of their thoughts and some of their best ideas that have come forward in those conversations tonight. So Ms. Collier, I'll start with you, and you can take it from there.
Hi everyone. I'm gonna try to see if Cleomi's microphone's working.
Hi, okay. So hi, my name is Cleomi Burrell, and I'm here to speak about Target Climate Willowdale. And I'd first like to direct your attention to our logo in the corner. And if you see this logo or someone with this logo, then you should understand that this person is working with the air, soil, and water to increase the life by decreasing the heat. So I'm going to tell a bit about us and what Target Climate really is. So my class, which is 8B, first started this project off by researching the UN Sustainable Goals. And we really started getting more research and information, and we decided to each pick a passion to show and present our project for our events, which we had started planning back in around December, January. And we decided to just bring the community of Willowdale together and have these issues and tell the adults how they can fix them, well, really anyone how can fix them. And yeah, we had over 150 people show up to our first event in March. And that really just helped us since we realized that we brought more of a community together. And okay, so we had 3 events. We had one in November of 2018 with Miss Collier's old class. We had a combined attendance of over 250 people show up at our 3 events. So the one in November, the one in March, and our one in April. We had all levels of government show up, including our MP, MPP, and the councillor. The City of Toronto and the Toronto District School Board were present, and the students hosted by showing their exhibits with their passion projects. And there was insufficient time available for questions for residents because so many people just wanted to speak and they all had questions. And we we think that's a really good thing.
So I'm just going to jump in. I'm Esther Collier. I'm the teacher for 8B, and I wanted to share some of the sort of hidden things that happen at these events. So there's a lot of connections been made between schools and the environmental community, and the kids are hearing from people who have ideas. So like one idea was about a library that could be up on the streets. So that's sort of a hidden thing that's happening. We did have a ravine cleanup proposed and really got started. There was lots of interest in it. Of course, with the pandemic, it's kind of been delayed. One of the other hidden benefits is the mental health, because the students are now feeling that what they're learning is connected with real life. That's had a really real benefit for them, and they have a sense of empowerment, and they've developed a lot of skills, planning skills and hosting skills. All of these things make for a really powerful education. They're engaged in what they're learning. And because of that connections and this engagement, we have enough people interested in being part of a management team. So we kind of have a Target Climate Willowdale little team starting, which will have students and community members and teachers, as well as the local leaders. And I think the best thing is just to see this event happening, because to know we always have wanted to have our political leaders be involved in the process.
Hi everyone. My name is Howard Jang, and back when we were looking at the UN's SDG goals, we also found out that target justice and target oceans are very important as well to building a sustainable community. So let's just say we can't achieve target climate without target justice, right? What if there's still poverty in the world, right? The homeless people might not be able to help us with the climate, and maybe if we don't help the oceans, again, we can't achieve target climate. So all three of these are deeply connected and very crucial to building a sustainable community. Thank you. So the climate crisis is currently a big worldwide dilemma, and even as a small community of Willowdale, we should help, right? And all small communities should help as well. This crisis can affect our future lives and generations that come after us. So like my children, what if I had children? What are their lives going to be like? And what is my life going to be like as an adult? It's not too late right now. We still have time, but we can't procrastinate anymore. We have to work on this now. So a message shared by us from Mr. Todd Solomon is, you have the essence of the teaching. To expand a bit, we must remember our past to learn the lessons given to us and be stewards of the future. We have responsibility to those yet to come and include this in our decisions today. The teaching, which I believe comes from the Haudenosaunee, is that we are still feeling the actions of the last 7 generations before us, and what we do today will still be felt 7 generations from now. Depending on who you talk to, this equals to about 140 years or so into the future. So 2161 seems like a distant place, but then again, if you look at the past 140 years ago was 1881, and you can see how things that happened in the time between then and now still resonate with us and shape our lives and attitudes today. So I'm assuming most of you here know the current situation right now, but for those who don't, I'm gonna sum it up pretty quickly. So this is something called the greenhouse effect. As greenhouse gases build up, these heat-trapping gases can be seen as a blanket that keeps the Earth warm. But right now, it's keeping it maybe too warm, right? So this is how global warming is made. More than 800 million people, which is 11% of the world's population, can already feel the consequences of climate change in their daily lives. And if we don't work on this, we might be soon part of that population. And according to this chart, it shows that Canada is falling behind the G7 nations in reducing emissions. And this is quite sad, as we are quite a developed country, and I really think we should do better. So this is really dangerous, as systems may collapse, right? This crisis, we might never be able to turn back on our actions that we've done before, right? So this is our only chance at this, and we should act now. And these causes are having effects that will seriously affect the social and economic stability of our future. What if wars happen because of this? What if the stock market crashes? That's going to start affecting our daily lives. And this is what makes everything so scary. Right, so currently this every day, right, youth like me, we see these charts, we see these pictures, they are scary, right? We're worried about this. We're worried about the futures, right? About the future, and these tasks are impossible for me to fix. Where are the others that should be here today? Right? Where are the other people that should be helping? And if we can't persuade others, then we can't solve this problem. So we should bring everyone into this. This is a job for everyone, not just me. And that's the point of Target Climate, persuading others. Right? When we see people working, this gives us, the youth, hope.
When we first started planning this Target Climate, I really felt like I was alone and that not many people would care or listen to us. But as we started planning more and invited more people, I felt like more people were really excited and were really wanted to help us in saving the planet. And this really made me and my classmates feel really happy.
So one of the questions really is sort of what's come out of this, and I just wanted to talk about sort of vision that we have, because the things that have come out of this is this connection that's happening and all that voice and the interest and the engagement on issues. So go ahead, you can advance the next thing as well, because when I first heard from the IPCC's report, and I also went to the TransformTO meeting and saw that 48% people didn't know what to do, and that we needed this community mobilization. So that's when the brainstorming kind of worked into place. And I think one of the best things that's come out of this is the connecting with community. But there's also this piece, and this is what Mark Carney was talking about recently when he was talking at the BBC Reith lectures. The need to make the average citizen get involved in the civil society, be engaged in the process. And so we're kind of like sheep. So we really need those our leaders to initiate the process, because we're anxious and we're aimless. And so that anxiety and aimlessness makes us avoid the problem. And so if there could be the kind of statement, and if you click again, you'll see it come up in the middle, which by the way, this is such a cheap solution too, because you don't have to actually do anything. We're mobilizing the power of the community, is just have our leaders say, yeah, there is an emergency, but we have a plan. Immediately there's a huge loss of stress that happens. And I've seen this in my class. I've seen it with kids, the smiles go on the faces. And so, to say, residents in Willowdale, you do need to do something, but we have ways forward for you. And you could say something like, we would love you all to attend one climate town hall each year, and that at this you would get the information, you would see the resources that Megan has just shown us, and that these would help you make the lifestyle changes you need to make. That people begin to feel like they're part of a movement. And then the networking that happens at these meetings where, oh, I didn't think of that idea, and okay, you've done that before, can I learn from you about how to do it? All of those things kind of spark new ideas, and we really access this creative energy in the community. I'd really like to ask also that the students stay involved. So I'm asking that if we do run these events in the future, that we really try to get the high schools hosting them. So students are developing the skills they need for the future, are engaged in the process, and most importantly, see the adults around them acting on the issue. I think all of this hope and energy is what we're seeing from the events we've run, all the different ideas that have popped up, all the links that have been made, all the connections with people. I get a lot of responses that are just so positive about it. And I think it's that energy that we really see building. It's not so much that we're doing things, but what we're seeing is sparks of people doing things around us because of the events that we've held. And we need more of those sparks growing in Willowdale. And I wanted to just credit Stephen and Vincent Yukon, and they have really helped put this presentation together. And Brian had so much of the information that's involved in there. So we're giving them a lot of credit too, and I know they wish they could be there. This started in Richmond Hill, so there is a Facebook page there connected with Target Climate Change Richmond Hill that you're welcome to join as well on their email address. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Collier, and your students that have been with us tonight. I think, Megan, you may have a few of these young people knocking on your door looking for a job within a few years' time. I know, working with young people, how much building concern there is within our youth, and it's really that generation that is going to bear our successes and failures from action or inaction right now. I'm wondering, were there any particular ideas that really resonated with you or the students in your class about little things that people could do in their daily lives to start making differences. You've talked a little bit about just participating in the process and participating in conversations, but from that perspective of the 48% that are really trying to figure out, what can I do? What's a little thing that would make a difference? Were there any ideas that really sort of floated to the top that would be worthy of mentioning tonight?
Yeah, and students, please feel free to jump in. There are people are interested in putting solar panels on the roofs. That comes up, and I've was able to connect them with a couple of people who've already done it, so that they had somebody to talk to about that. And there's also the ideas about getting more cycling and walking happening rather than driving the cars, especially around schools, to get less carpooling happening. And I think people are also talking quite a bit about being vegetarian, and there were people asking for ideas about how to cook vegetarian or eat vegetarian. And I think the other voice that I was hearing was reusing materials like food waste, so that they were looking for ways to have get food without waste itself. So people were sharing a lot of places, bearmarket.ca, and places where you could go and get your things without having bags and unreusable containers. So those ideas were coming up as well.
Terrific.
Yeah, guys.
Any thoughts from Howard or Cleome on that? Before, there are a couple of those that I want to put to John and Megan, but just
Yeah,
to
I think,
sort of elaborate.
sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I think Ms. Collier made great points with bringing up stuff like people were talking about reusing and like trying to lower their waste with food and everything. So I think Ms.
Right.
Collier really brought up all the points. So
Yeah, I would say so. Right. They were really great points that yeah.
Well, I give you guys full credit. The first evening I attended at Cummer Valley, the topic of reusable food containers came up, and while I was in the meeting, I actually got onto Amazon on my app and ordered a reusable coffee cup, and thought that was going to be my outcome of the evening. It's a coffee cup I still have today, a year and a half later. I haven't been into many Starbucks or Tim Hortons over the last 15 months, so it hasn't quite had the impact that I was hoping for. But I'm still using it for my morning coffees, and that was one behavior change from the actions that you guys took, and a really neat just sort of opportunity to just think and reflect, and what's a little thing that could be done to make a difference. Megan, I wonder if you were able to speak to for a moment. Council passed a motion a week ago addressing encouraging businesses to do more programs to encourage reducing single-use plastics and reusing takeout containers and that type of thing. Is that something that you might be able to elaborate on in terms of what the city is looking at in terms of encouraging more of that behavior amongst our businesses?
Sure. I wasn't actually directly involved with that strategy, so I can't really comment on the particulars or the technical pieces, but certainly we've been working for quite some time in outreach and engagement on waste and encouraging people to just to really be mindful about their waste and consumption. So one of the things that's cool about connecting with the businesses is that it's really going to help people to be mindful when they go for the first time for takeout and they actually can't get some cutlery, for example. It really will help people to understand what the impact of that behavior might be. So we're really excited about that council initiative. I'm excited to see it roll out.
All right, and I know there's still some eyes at the city level watching what the federal government is going to be doing in terms of legislating limitations on single-use plastics. But I think in the meantime, making it an opt-in element or encouraging businesses to not just automatically include that stuff in takeaway, or to develop programs to encourage takeaway containers, to have a formal incentive program, recognition program for businesses that are taking part, hopefully will be a step in the right direction while we wait for more legislative steps. So that was encouraging, and I think speaks to some of the concerns that the students and Ms. Collier were mentioning. John, another one of the topics that came up is the notion of walking and cycling. You know, those are elements that we have spent a lot of time talking about in our office over the last several years. You've spent a lot of time talking about in the community. Do you want to speak maybe for a moment about some of the local initiatives that you've been working on, or things that you're interested in to encourage more cycling and more walking in the community, as the students have talked about?
Sure. Well, actually, the big one, you know, that we were so delighted to see pass after years of fighting for it was Transform Young, which will reduce lanes of traffic on Young Street by 50% and really encourage a walkable neighborhood. Um, you know, it's always struck me that in Willowdale, we have the great big driveways for in the single family homes anyway. And you know, people often have two cars, and even for, you know, something fairly simple, just picking up some takeout food, or, you know, picking up some milk or something, people will get in the car. And in other parts of the city, people walk much more frequently and much more naturally. And I think, you know, creating a real main street on Young and having it be a gathering place and having people, I'm quite sure that when that is completed in 5 or 6 years, that we will see a lot more people walking that just won't think of getting in a car and going out to Young Street. They'll walk out with their families to go shopping on the weekend. And we saw from the stats on how much driving personal vehicles contributes to climate change. And if we can just get people only using a car when they need to, and you know, it's so much healthier to walk too, apart from the benefits to the environment. So that's the thing I'm most excited about, that, you know, that our office has been involved in. I guess I could say that wouldn't have happened without our office kind of helping conceive of it and push for it. So, and what was really interesting on that one, Marcus, and you were there with me through all the meetings, was when we first started out, people weren't very keen on it. They kind of, people were saying, well, but, you know, where am I going to park my car? And, you know, I really, you know, it's going to impact my drive home or my drive somewhere. And after 2 or 3 years of us having conversations in the community, the opinion just switched overwhelmingly to, like, virtually all of the community leaders by the end were totally in favor of making the change on encouraging cycling and walking, and wanting to have much less reliance on cars, and did not want to have this big highway with cars spewing noise and pollution going right through the middle of the community. So I think people really are coming around, and that was really an encouraging sign.
Terrific. Thanks, John. And you know, I think there's one more piece that I would link in as well, and one that's not necessarily automatically intuitive, but how much the road safety piece ties into the willingness of students in particular and their parents to allow them to walk and bike to school. I've met with literally dozens of parent councils in the ward and talked about that. And I think it's another area where the city's doing a lot of work. We've been doing a lot of work as well on that front, bringing in programs like Vision Zero, the Safe School Zones program, the automated speed enforcement cameras, the watch your speed signs, creating more safe crossing zones in the neighborhood, and looking for locations where we can fill in sidewalk gaps or add more cycling infrastructure. So I think those are all also really important pieces to create the comfort that people need to rely more on those tools, because it's not just a question of convenience. It's also a question of people feeling safe and feeling good about making those choices in their lives. And I think there's a lot of work that we can continue to do at the city level to continue to encourage that kind of thinking. With that, I'm going to go over to a member of our audience. I see Kathy McBay has a hand up. So we will bring Kathy to the floor and then go into our Q&A box to pull in some more questions from the audience. Kathy, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Am I
Hear you loud and
unmuted?
clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for offering this event, John and Marcus and Jesse, everyone in the office there, and to Esther and your students. Thank you for all your leadership. I'm one of the scout leaders for the 14th Willowdale, and by participating in your events this spring, you've sparked lots of good ideas for the scouts. So thank you for that. And I wonder, Esther, if you could share information about what you've been doing with the leadership you've been giving in the Richmond Hill area through our church, unless I missed the first little bit there, so you might have already done it, but if not, maybe you could share something on that. And also, John, you've still got the slow down signs, if you can mention about that at all, but maybe that was already done.
I'll just say that in Richmond Hill, we've also been working with faith communities, and one of the people on the management team is connected with Willowdale faith communities as well, and we're looking at how to connect with the community through congregations and asking the faith communities to sort of share ideas and to increase the base of people who are getting the resources and information they need. And so in Richmond Hill, we held a couple one was in a church where we were actually just at the point of holding one in one of the Hindu temples on Yonge Street, and then the pandemic came. But it really spread, and there is a management team working on similar things there. We don't have links to the school board in Richmond Hill, but we're working through faith communities, and again, these networking meetings are really really interesting and engaging and connecting a lot of people. And I think one of my best stories is a woman named Carrie Ty, who has now got an organization and working in Richmond Hill. She's created a website, Neighbors for the Planet. But she came to that first meeting I held with just like a body rich with anxiety, like just, what are we going to do? This hopeless. She just found out about the climate crisis, and she was at panic at the end of her tether. And she is now like sees the world completely differently, because at that meeting she just saw all these other people who already knew and had ideas, and just that hope that was put into her that allowed her then to have the energy to, now she's got people coming over to plan ideas and small groups, and it's just such a force for energy in Richmond Hill. Has been part of she got asked to be on the community engagement plan that's been developed. Richmond Hill newsletter just came out. I just caught it at my door the other day, and it's full of climate things. I don't think there was anything climate related in it before, but it's just really changed the view that's happening at Richmond Hill just from all these connections made between people. It's very powerful. So
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy, for mentioning the slowdown signs. I believe we still have quite a few available to us. Marcus is nodding. And I think Jesse is so keen on them that he delivers them personally by bicycle. So
All right.
if you know anyone who wants one, we'll certainly get it out to them. And on that front, of course, we are proceeding with the photo radar, which the results, I mean, it's the good news, I guess, is that it is causing some people to slow down. The bad news is it's shown us just how many people are speeding in many cases repeatedly through the neighborhood. And to help deal with that, as part of Vision Zero, we will be lowering speed limits in the next year or so, probably in Willowdale. That it is being phased in across the city, and I think we are going to be one of the early neighborhoods in adopting lower speed limits for all streets.
Terrific. Thanks, John. And yes, absolutely. If anybody out there wants to please slow down, sign, send an email to our office. We'll make sure that you get one as quickly as possible. We're also working on some initiatives over the summer. Jesse and I were talking about today how we can make those even more readily available or convenient for people to pick up throughout the neighborhood. I'm going to go to a question in our Q&A box. I think this one will be directed to Megan. This is from Julie Sieg, and she asks, while 55% of Toronto's GHG emissions are from buildings, the 2019 TransformTO implementation update only mentions city-owned buildings, which is only a small percentage of buildings in Toronto. I am therefore wondering what is being done to reduce the emissions from private buildings. Thank you.
I could definitely speak to that. And I apologize, I have lost access to my video. I can't see anyone either, so I'm sorry about that. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. I did plop a link into the Q&A to the June 2020 implementation update, which does actually speak quite a bit to private buildings, including highlighting some private building wins. But as I noted in the chat as well, that a lot of action takes place like at the building level in terms of, construction level in terms of supporting the Toronto Green Standard, the mandatory and voluntary efforts there, as well. A big part of private sector outreach or private industry outreach is connecting with homeowners and building owners in how to reduce their energy use, particularly through deep energy retrofit. So take a peek at that report. It's actually, it's quite long, but there's lots of pictures. So take a peek at it, and there's lots of private sector examples in there. Thanks for the question.
That's great, Megan. Thanks very much. And we've certainly put out some information through our office on the city's home energy loan program or help with some tools to help homeowners do some of those retrofits. We are also hoping to engage a little bit further with our multi-residential buildings, which is now such a big part of Willowdale community. I know we have several members from the Young Corridor Condominium Association with us tonight. We've already had a few conversations with them about how we can work together to get more of this information to condo boards and condo management offices to take a look at their buildings. The condominium corporations often have some resources to work on those sorts of things collectively. And my understanding is the city also has a grants program available for community groups looking to get involved in various programs. Megan, is the grants program something that you have some information on or would be able to speak to for a moment?
Sure. Yes. So we have an open climate action grant right now that's connected to the community clusters. If you're not familiar with those clusters, that is okay because it's new with COVID. But in essence, that grant is available for community groups and agencies that are working directly with our most vulnerable residents in Toronto. So there's information on our website under the Climate Action Fund. We also have in the past grants directed towards particular emissions reduction efforts, such as our waste reduction community grants. So yeah, there's lots of grants out there. We have on our website a particular page just for environmental grants and incentives, which has tons of information. I can pop that in the chat as well.
All right, that's great. Jesse is telling me that we actually have Paul Jonas with us tonight from the Young Corridor Condominium Association. I wonder if we can bring Paul on for a moment just to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that YCCA has taken on with some of their members, engaging in the 3R Ambassador Program, focusing on waste diversion. Paul, if you would be so kind, I wonder if we could get you to speak on that for a moment.
Sure, I'd be happy to. But first, I'd like to thank you for hosting this event and to congratulate Esther and her kids for their efforts. When I was in the Boy Scouts, we'd go out and do, creek cleanups and things like that, and thought we were doing something great. But this is just so far beyond that. I'm really impressed. Taking it to the next step and engaging with local governments and other members of the community. And that's what YCCA tries to do. We try to establish a community so that we can communicate some of these good ideas to more of the high rises. One of the big reasons is because high rises are not nearly as good as single family homes at taking care of waste management and diversion. And we have done several things in the past couple of years to try and aid high rises, condos, and in improving their efforts in this. So one of the things we did a few years ago as part of a 3R support program was to come up with a nice list of the 3R's tips and have them translated into multiple languages. So we have them in Farsi, Russian, traditional, and simplified Chinese. We have them in English as well, if somebody's interested in that. So those are available. I'd sent them to Jesse, but they're also available on the YCCA Facebook page, or if someone wants to contact me, I can make them available there as well. Two other things that we've done recently are part of our series of conversations with specialist leaders in certain areas. So one of the things we sponsored was How Smart is Your Condo series. It was a 2-series event where we met with city representatives and other leaders on how to make our buildings more efficient. If you're in a condo or an apartment, you feel like there's not a lot you can do except maybe recycle your organics. But the buildings as a whole can greatly decrease their energy use by doing things like converting to LEDs or changing pumps and controllers to use less energy. And all of that adds up and can greatly reduce greenhouse gases. Another thing that we did recently was host a 2-part series on how to encourage and introduce electric vehicle infrastructure into condos so that we're ready when as soon as people are ready to move to electric vehicles. Increasing that infrastructure is one of the major roadblocks to people buying electric vehicles. They'll say, hey, there aren't any chargers at my building. Well, we want to eliminate that and make it much easier for people to move to electric vehicles. So we have those slides and information available also on our YCCA Facebook page.
That's great, Paul. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we have committed to working with YCCA. John has committed over the summer months to partner together to take some next steps and pull our condo communities together, both your members and other condos that may not be part of YCCA yet, so that we can make sure we have an opportunity to share some of those best practices and make sure everybody is aware of some of the resources that the city has available for our multi-residential communities to take those steps. So that's really great. And of course, if there are any participants tonight that happen to be living in one of our condo buildings or apartment buildings, you have an interest in this, check with your board and make sure they're members of the YCCA. If they're not yet, YCCA has a website up, and I'm sure you can use that to contact them, or we would happily connect you through our office as well.
Thanks.
All right, and with that, I'm going to go to our next audience question. I believe that we have a question from Matt Fonner about what kind of waste or what kinds of waste in particular are contributing most to GHG emissions. So it's probably a question for Megan.
Yes, thank you. We're talking about majority of emissions coming from landfills. It's actually attributed to food waste.
Okay. And then related to that, I think the other part of the question, he's living in a condo townhouse where waste pickup is privately contracted and does not include green bin. Is there a way to have green bin included? Megan, would you happen to know the answer to that?
That is a tricky one. Suggesting to talk to property management or your condo board. So if you have City of Toronto pickup, it's mandatory to have all 3 streams. So that's garbage, recycling, and organics. That's mandatory to be a part of the program. But if you have private pickup, it's not. So I would suggest to reach out to your property manager and or your board.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a way to easily mix and match from the city side. So it'd be something, I think, if you're committed to private collection, that would have to be addressed with the supplier. I am seeing a question from Marilyn Erickson in the Q&A box. So I'm going to read that one out. Small modular nuclear reactors are being supported by federal and some provincial governments, including Ontario, New Brunswick, and diverting green initiative funds to SMRs, amounting to greenwashing of SMRs. SMRs are being considered for the GTA. How is our City of Toronto Council addressing these SMRs that have the same environmental, health, and safety waste disposal as large nuclear reactors? Pickering is apparently being looked at for an SMR. I'm going to throw that over to you first, Megan, if that's on the radar of your office, if that's something that you've encountered.
Sure. I actually haven't encountered specifically SMRs, although I've been following it personally in the news. Just to comment on energy generation in Toronto, so not to talk specifically about SMRs, but when we are traveling on this path to net zero, like, we are going to have to be generating our own power more and more in the city, but really our focus in what we're recommending is like a focus on renewables. So within the City of Toronto limits, that if we're generating our own power, it would be renewable low carbon energy. But that's just all to say because, as I mentioned previously, one of our big reductions in emissions was due to the provincial switch in energy. So we don't necessarily have jurisdiction over those types of things. Where we're pulling our electricity from is from the provincial grid by and large. So we do need to focus on creating our own energy sources, but really the recommendation from our team would be to be focusing on renewables.
All right, thanks, Megan. And John, I'll throw it over to you for a moment. I don't think this is something that has formally come to council yet, but do you have any thoughts?
I really am not knowledgeable enough to on the subject. I'm interested, but I wouldn't want to venture anything at this point. I really don't know enough about the subject.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to be awaiting a few more staff reports and welcoming more thoughts from the community to make sure you get that information before city is needed to take a position on that issue. The next question we have is again from Matt. It's a cycling question. We have cycling connections going east and west from North York Centre, but we have a real lack of connections going south and connecting North York Centre to Midtown. Aiming to increase cycling in the city and reducing GHG for transportation requires connections like these to safely cross 401. What is being done within Willowdale to promote cycling and address improved connectivity? John, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, we, as I'm sure you know, we've taken a start with starting on cycling on Willowdale. That will be completed in the coming years as the rest of Willowdale Avenue is resurfaced. On Yonge Street specifically, we have Transform Yonge, which you probably know runs roughly from Shepherd to Finch, and we will be extending that further north as the subway construction is completed and Yonge Street is reduced in lanes. I'm assuming going ahead there. The difficult area, as you mentioned, is navigating past the Yonge 401 interchange. We've tried a number of times to get that a solution to that integrated as much as possible into the work that's being done on the Yonge 401 interchange. We have not had as much progress on that as I would like. It is currently, a very dangerous spot. And, we've even gone for treks led by a community member to try to kind of find a solution, and came up with a couple of innovative ones, but nothing so far that we're getting any positive response from city staff on how to solve that. There's a culvert that runs underneath the 401 that there has been talk over the years of using, but it's been so far deemed too dangerous. And because if you had a big storm, it's fairly long and it could be dangerous. It's also, would not be a safe place at night for people. So we're kind of stumped. I know further to the south, you have councillors like Michael, Josh Matlow, who are quite interested. In Jay Robinson's ward, I think Jay might be a bit apprehensive, but there certainly are some community groups that have been advocating for bike lanes. So I guess we're doing it gradually, but probably too slowly. But, we are kind of making some steps forward, and all ears as far as any suggestions anyone might have for how to get that done faster and make all those connections.
I'll flag a couple of very important conversations that are going to be coming over the next little while on that issue. John referenced the Yonge 401 interchange upgrade that has been had been ground to a halt for close to a decade because of inaction at the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. Our MPP has succeeded in getting that unstuck just in the last several months. So there will be an environmental assessment starting on that project later this year. That is going to include I think several rounds of community consultation to talk about what that interchange should look like. Part of that process will be selecting what the design would be of upgrading that interchange, and city staff are certainly very interested in including a cycling route through that interchange to make sure that that's a safe option and better connecting what's happening in North York and on Yonge Street in particular with what's happening to the south. Now, there will be some feasibility challenges as we go through that. John had referenced. So the other big conversation that's coming up is on the future of the golf courses in the city, and in particular at the Don Valley Golf Course. There are going to be consultations, a specific consultation to that location coming up in the next few weeks. Of course, getting past the 401, may include some creative strategies using some of that space as well, if there is a possibility of shielding people from golf balls along the way. So, certainly a conversation we're watching to see if there are any opportunities for integrating more pedestrian access or more cycling access through that space, connecting some of our other trails in the neighborhood, and perhaps getting some of the cycling trails that currently run from Bathurst Park and Burnett Woods down into Earl Bales, connecting that towards Hogs Hollow. That may be another way to collectively bypass the 401 interchange and expand our cycling network. So for those interested in the community, those are two conversations to watch with opportunities for community engagement coming in the next few months. Jesse, have I missed anything, or should we go to our polling?
We could go to the polling. I think we've gotten a lot of the questions addressed, and any other questions people have, there will be a slide at the end that will have people's email addresses, so you can reach out to people individually, and our office would be very happy to facilitate answers to those questions. So let's go to the interactive polling.
So what are we seeing here, Jesse? We've got, is that option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, it looks like some people have already started voting.
Oh, okay. So we're just seeing the order here. What will you prioritize in the next year to help TransformTO at home? And so far, the number one option is reduce energy and water use, especially during peak periods, followed by making your home, house, or condo more energy efficient. Those now are tied for first place. Look at that as I'm speaking, jockeying for position here. Number 3, use LED light bulbs and turn off lights and unplug unused electronics. Apparently, we've got some work to do on green and cool roofs. We want to encourage some of our condos to take those on. I'm just seeing a question popping up about how one votes. So again, you have to go into your web browser, to the web address pollev.com and then /John Filion 790. Have you brought up the next one yet on the screen?
Not yet. I'll do that now.
I'm just typing that link into the chat box for anybody that's still looking for it. Okay, and then we're going to go to how will you most likely help TransformTO in the next year when getting around? And we've got information coming in on this already. Walking or biking if the trip is under 5 kilometers, currently running in first place. Traveling by bus or train instead of flying. Using transit carpooling rather than driving alone, or working from home. Certainly the working from home is one a lot of us have been doing over the last little while. Then won't idle vehicles unless they're human powered, or use electric or hybrid vehicles over gas powered. So it looks like walking and biking is currently in first place. We've talked a lot about that this evening. That's great. With transit and carpooling, or working from home in well, now third place. So in real time, these are again jockeying for position.
All right, we're gonna switch over in 5 seconds. So anybody's got one last vote, send it in now. All right.
All right, and what waste and food priorities will you make in the next year to help TransformTO? It doesn't look like we've got any on these yet, so this is a fresh one. So the options are buying less, choosing products with minimal packaging, eating less meat and more plant-based foods, repair, share, swap, or donate as much as possible, recycle right, check the Waste Wizard and TO Waste app, and buy used and vintage items more often.
And a few more seconds, and then we can close up and give everybody the emails to use to contact the panelists.
All right, that seems to be locking in there. Buying less, choosing products with minimal packaging at number 1. We've talked a little bit about that tonight. Some of the steps that the city is taking, and then number 2, eating less meat and more plant-based foods. Something my wife is encouraging of me on a regular basis as well. So that's a good one as well. All right. So I think with that, are we seeing any more hands up or any other Q&As we've missed, Jesse, before we wrap up?
Not that I see. I think it's good.
So with that, I am going to say a huge word of thanks to Megan McLean at the City of Toronto's Office Environment and Energy, working on the TransformTO plan, for taking time out of her evening to join us tonight. As she's mentioned, the city is going to be engaging in other follow-ups over the summer in July, and we're going to be publishing some of those details in John's newsletter, so keep an eye out for that. We'll keep the conversation going. You can provide some feedback directly to the city and the report that will be coming back to council later this year, updating our councillors on the city's plan. Also want to thank Esther Collier of Target Climate Willowdale and Cummer Valley Middle School, and of course her students, Howard and Chloe, for joining us tonight and encouraging us to keep this conversation going. I think that's one of the big takeaways that they have for us, and we'll certainly do that. Look for more opportunities to have these sorts of conversations, and whether in a targeted way with our multi-residential buildings or in a more general way for the community moving forward. I am sure Esther will continue to send us some of those ideas and initiatives, and we'll look forward to bringing those out. And a big thank you to John. I don't know if you want to say some final words, John, as we wrap things up tonight.
No, just thanks to all the panelists, and thanks to you, Marcus, and thanks everybody who joined us tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We're meeting with Earl Higgs Eco Council tomorrow, so maybe we'll be
Great.
protecting you from that eventually.
Yeah, terrific.
Okay.
That's great. Wonderful. Good. And thanks to all of our attendees for participating in the conversation tonight, for your questions. It's been great to have you on board. We certainly couldn't do these without having our participants. So we appreciate you giving up your time to join us tonight. With that, we will wish you all a good evening. Thanks for being part of this, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Right.